I'm no longer asking. Sign the f*** up.
Anyway, this is Philosophy Tube, pre-transition. Listen, they don't look like this anymore. If I'm being transphobic by showing a pre-trans person, well, I don't know, most trans people are happy showing themselves pre-transition now, which is something I don't understand, but hey. But yeah, we got Philosophy Tube, transphobia, and analysis. So this will be fun, because I haven't been bored to tears by every single video so far. This will definitely perk me up, yay.
The ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus apparently used to teach using this demonstration. A visual experience is like this. Belief is like this. A clear and definite experience is like this. And knowledge is like that. And only the wise man can have knowledge. And then another...
Wow, that's so deep. See, I can't do that. I must not be a very wise man, I guess. I can't figure out how to do the wise man bit. So, I don't know, I guess.
Another bunch of philosophers called the skeptics came along, and they said, oh yeah, cool. Do you know anything about that? Before we dive into the remainder of this video, I should say up front that I am cisgender. For those of you who might be new to this sort of terminology, that
Anyway.
means that my gender matches the one I was assigned at birth, so I'm not transgender.
Your gender assigns... Listen, all of you cisgender people, can you feel how much your gender identity matches the sex you were assigned at birth, and how those things linking up is like why you're male or female? You can probably feel it, just me describing it, right? That's definitely how it works.
And this video is pitched at cis people who might be encountering these concepts for the very first time. And although I can talk about metaphysics and ancient Greek skepticism until the cows come home, there's a big list of trans creators and writers and philosophers down there in the description whose work you should definitely check out. Some of them actually helped me make this video, because without their experience, this discussion is incomplete, and I'm actually incapable of being an expert on it. If I'm your first...
That's not really true. I mean, I don't know. It's good to get informed opinions and stuff, but you can be an expert, I think, like without being trans.
Exposure to these ideas, then that's cool, as long as I'm not the last. And as for my trans audience, feel free to take the rest of class off and go to the pub. Alternatively, stick around and tell me what I got wrong. So let's begin with the work of trans philosophy professor Talia.
We're doing the latter, in case you can't tell. Nope, what's that? Oh, what did I ask? I'm so sorry, I can't remember.
Betcha. And I'd like to start by introducing you to the concept of your dad. I'm not sure how well this will translate outside the UK, but I'll do my best. First things first, your dad is not daddy. Daddy's something else. Put daddy out of your mind. Your dad is not necessarily your actual dad, or my actual dad. He's more like the platonic ideal of a certain kind of opinion haver. Typically your dad is relatively privileged, not always male, not always older. There are varying degrees of your dad. Maybe you are.
I hate the term assigned. It's like we all got our homework assigned when we got out of school. Yeah, kinda. Jen McMahon, hi, good to see you.
Your dad, but here's your dad. 15 years ago.
Gender identity. Whatever this person says it is, because this person apparently is cleverer. He's cleverer than me because he can do this and I can't because I try and do it. And it's like, that's a wise man, according to Philosophy Tube. So who am I to disagree? You know, if a person with over 1 million subscribers says something, it must be true.
If he's straight, your dad would have said something casually homophobic. Something like this.
I've got no problem with gay people, right? No problem at all. So long as they do it away from me, I don't mind.
15 years on, your dad's learned that sort of thing doesn't fly anymore, and he's changed for the better. According to Betcher, the philosophical core of homo...
Now, the real question is, did he always talk out of the side of his mouth, or was that a trans thing? Because he always used to... In, like, the more recent videos, they're, like, talking like this a lot. Can you see? Can you see what I'm doing? Kinda, yeah, yeah, I want to see if he still does it.
Homophobia and biphobia is the false belief that same-sex relationships are in some sense not as good as straight ones, whether because they're supposed to be sinful or unnatural, or whatever the version of the bigotry we're talking about says. At its heart, that kind of bigotry rests, she says, on an ethical claim, a claim about what human beings should and should not do. So when your dad said, as long as they do it away from me, he was still holding on to that core idea, because he had been fine with what he perceived as a straight relationship happening near him.
Would he actually be fine with two straight people doing, like, sex shit in front of him? I'm not sure about that.
He just thought that same-sex relationships weren't as good somehow. Although he pruned the fungus of his bigotry, he was still holding on to the spore. And
I don't know about that.
15 years hence, he's realised that that spore is false and harmful, and he's let it go and become a better person. But now, your dad will say something like this.
Well, yeah, if people want to be called by whatever pronouns or wear whatever clothes or, change their name, that's okay with me. I haven't got a problem with it at all. I think people should be able to do as they please.
Maybe that's your position.
The mouthfeel t-shirt. Was Philosophy Tube and ContraPoints dating around October 2018? Wonder.
Confession time, years ago when I was an undergrad, about 18, I was your dad. When I, in my enormously privileged bubble, first encountered the concept of being transgender, this was the position that I defaulted to. It just seemed like that's what a nice person would do, and I wanted to be nice and get on with everyone. So I've met cisgender people of all ages and backgrounds and sexualities who hold this basically like liberal-minded and tolerant.
No, the good person thing to do is to meet trans people and then completely steal all their life as much as you can. That's a joke.
View, which is still dangerously wrong. So if that's you, then Betcha invites us to take the next step. She says that whilst this outlook is, in her opinion, preferable to outright hostility against trans people, like your dad's casual homophobia 15 years ago, it's still holding on to the spore. Because she says, unlike homophobia and biphobia, where the core false claim is an ethical one, the core of a lot of the transphobia she's experienced and researched is...
Are we really saying that, oh, I don't mind gays as long as they're not like doing it in front of me? Is that an ethical position? I don't know. I really am not even sure now, and it's like 4:30. I mean, at least I guess they're like saying something of anything, but still.
Is metaphysical skepticism. The false belief that trans people don't really exist as trans people, but are really the gender they were assigned at birth. And this metaphysical skepticism, she says, is what in the minds of bigots operates as a theoretical justification for putting trans people in the wrong prisons, denying them access to domestic violence shelters,
Hold on.
is metaphysical.
Because we're telling people how they think unconsciously, I guess, which is just difficult to... I don't know. It's difficult for me not to be skeptical. I need to maybe collect my thoughts on why.
Physical skepticism. The false belief.
Because this is the thing. Maybe the problem is so many people do this kind of shit to me, where it's like, nah, actually, you're doing a metaphysical skepticism, which proves that you're actually a transphobe. And it's like, okay, I don't think I am personally, so sure. Maybe that's kind of poisoned me against this kind of analysis. But then, I don't know. I just think it's better not to tell people how they think as best you can, and not be like, well, you must be using this framework that I'm telling you, because you're saying this kind of thing, which is some kind of transphobia.
That trans people don't really exist as trans people, but are really the gender they were assigned at birth. And this metaphysical skepticism, she says, is what in the minds of bigots operates as a
This is why bigots...
theoretical justification for putting trans people in the wrong prisons, denying them access...
Because they're not actually trans. Maybe, I guess, I don't know.
to domestic violence shelters, banning them from public spaces, misgendering them, committing violence towards them, and all manner of horrific treatment. Nowadays, a skeptic, or skeptic if you're in North America, usually means somebody who prioritizes evidence, especially scientific evidence, in explaining things. Or at least someone who aspires to do that with the evidence as they see it. On YouTube, things don't always shake out that way. But the ancient Greeks had a far more radical form of skepticism, one which is alive and well right now. Unlike the rational skeptics of today, the skeptics of yore were less keen on evidence. In fact, at times their position was pretty anti-evidence.
Yeah, they're more kind of Frida Wallace types, I guess.
Driving question was, how do you know the things that you claim to know? You say all these things about the world, about reason, about what exists, but you could be wrong. For every experience you have, which you think is evidence of the truth, you could have an identical experience, but which is false. So you can never really say for certain that you know anything. If you've studied A-level philosophy, you might have encountered René Descartes and his idea of radical doubt. Similar sort of thing. If you haven't read Descartes, though, don't worry about it. In philosophy, thinking about what exists is called metaphysics, and thinking about knowledge and what it is and how we get it is called epistemology. And what the ancient skeptics were doing was subtly switching from one to the other. They were putting metaphysics on the shelf and saying, from now on, it's all about epistemology. It's all about how you know. And this is the same move that some people are making today.
We tend to divide ancient skepticism into two waves: academic skepticism, named after Plato's Academy, and later Pyrrhonist skepticism. Although both schools were fond of debate and questioning, the Pyrrhonists placed a lot of emphasis on both sides being equal, saying that for every point of view, an equally strong and persuasive counterpoint could also be put forward.
Unlike the kind of competitive debate a lot of contemporary rational skeptics value, the goal the Pyrrhonists had in mind was not to find which point of view in a debate wins, or to reach a compromise, but to suspend judgment indefinitely, to ensure the debate never stops, and thereby achieve what they called ataraxia, a relaxed, worry-free state. Don't ever say that anything is definitely true.
What, so... I feel like that's kind of where we're at now, and it's become the opposite of that, but sure.
Or that anything definitely exists. Don't believe anything. Just have your opinion. Know that it's just an opinion, and you'll never have to worry about whether or not you're right.
The ancient skeptic Sextus Empiricus...
This it sounds very anti-intellectual. It's not that I don't understand the point and agree with it to an extent, but is this where we're going? We should think about trans people in an anti-intellectual way? I mean, I guess plenty of people have done it, so you've inspired a lot of people, if nothing else.
writes, those who hold the opinion that things are good or bad by nature are perpetually troubled. When they lack what they believe to be good, they take themselves to be persecuted by natural evils and pursue what, so they think, is good. And when they have acquired these things, they experience more troubles, for they are related beyond reason and measure, and in fear of change, they do anything so as not to lose what they believe to be good. But those who make no determination about what is good and bad by nature neither avoid nor pursue anything with intensity, and hence they are tranquil. And Sextus makes a tempting offer, especially when it comes to politics. If you've got the privilege to do it, it is easier to just not pick a side, to not watch the news, to not have an opinion, to just have another drink and let the world sort itself out for a while.
Take control of your life today. Set yourself free and experience relief from belief. Ask your doctor if ataraxia is right for you. Ataraxia. Worry less, live more.
The metaphysical skepticism at the heart of a lot of transphobia has some noticeable effects on the political discourse surrounding trans rights. One obvious example would be the activist slogan, trans women are women, trans men are men, which is an ontological statement, a statement about existence. Similar
Ontological statement, a statement about existence. So trans women exist as women. So I'm just making sure I understand. Just referring to the branch of metaphysics. So it's like we just made it up and now it's true. Is that I don't know. Let's keep going.
Similarly, Betcher remarks that many trans people who get misgendered say it's not just rude, but a factual error.
Well, the problem with everything just being a perspective is that, well then, actually no, and well therefore transphobia isn't wrong then surely, because their opinion is you're not a woman because you were born male with XY chromosomes and a penis, you know?
It does not reflect reality. On the flip side, if you trawl some of the transphobic corners of the internet, you'll find some people upset because they think trans people are demanding special treatment.
Which we are.
When bigots assume, falsely, that trans people don't exist, they deduce...
Bigots. No one says that trans people don't exist, by the way. I hate this argument so much. No one's saying you don't exist. They're saying they disagree with your self-perception. And unfortunately, you don't have the right to anyone's self-perception. It's like when you get people that are like obsessed with not being misunderstood by anyone. Unfortunately, that's just going to happen. Do I have the right for people to not perceive me as a right-winger just because I don't see myself as one? I get called it plenty of times because I don't always say the right thing for like trans people, I guess. But
use the next logical but false step that transphobia also does not exist and is to be similarly explained in terms of something else or explained away. And
I mean, transphobia doesn't exist because people aren't trans, they're still just men or women, I don't know. I guess you need a specific word for hating on people that are compelled to be the other sex or believe they are the other sex due to dysphoria or whatever. But then it used to be that we didn't literally believe that we were the other sex, and now we do. I don't know if this is going to be another case of things got way weirder in hindsight, but you know.
If it didn't exist, there would be no need for special legal protection against it.
So when your dad and 18-year-old me, encountering the concept for the first time, says, I don't have a problem with it, people should be able to do what they like, what we're really saying is, trans people are the gender they were assigned at birth, but we're just going to play along with it because that's the nice thing.
How do you know? What? You like essentialize like a really normal thing to say.
In terms of something else or explained away. And if it didn't exist, there would be no need for special legal protection against it.
So when your dad and 18-year-old me, encountering the concept for the first time, says, I don't have a problem with it, people should be able to do what they like.
How is that them really saying, I still see you as a man, but I'll pretend you're a woman? Because that seems to be what he's saying.
What we're really saying is, trans people are the gender they were assigned at birth.
Like, how? Like, I don't mind, like, aren't you suspending judgment? Like, what's with this, like, need to essentialize the fuck out of, like, statements that supposedly other people are making? And again, it's, like, so much emphasis on analyzing other people's, like, words and intentions, which is extremely hard to do for the hopefully obvious reason that you can't read someone's mind. I really don't like this kind of analysis, if I'm honest. I tried watching this video like much sooner to when it came out because like I was into this kind of stuff. I was into like ContraPoints and like H-Bomber Guy and stuff, but I just found it too dry. And now that I'm watching it, it's just kind of like, I don't know. I don't know how I'd map any of this onto my life so far, but go off, I guess.
But we're just going to play along with it because that's the nice thing to do. So we're still holding on to the spore of the bigotry.
I reject that. I'm sorry. If someone explains it to me better, then fair enough. I think it's choosing an unflattering version of what they're saying. Sex denial and the claim that it's not binary is literally the only thing that got me focused on trans discourse. Yeah. I mean, Jesus, I'm still getting screamed at by people on certain videos I've done where I claimed that sex was binary, so I don't know. It's bimodal and there's 6 sex carrier types apparently. So yeah, let's not think about why there's only 2 sexes out of those 6 sexes that work and reproduce children, I guess.
Which survives and waits to either flourish in us again or be passed on and flourish in someone else. But okay, maybe you're still a little bit your dad and you're on board and you want everyone to be happy and...
Yeah, so he's suggesting that anyone who thinks these kind of things and is kind of non-committal around trans people, they're still holding on to that spore of bigotry or whatever, which I do not agree with at all.
Protected and have legal rights if they need them, but when you suggest that we sit down and talk about this, maybe you feel people aren't willing to debate it with you. Or perhaps you're one of the people who watches my show and...
A few people aren't willing to debate. Yeah, but why aren't they willing to debate though? What I find is that trans people look for any excuse not to debate, usually because the other person has a point that they really can't answer. And let's be honest, most of these trans people, they're not fucking philosophy tube or ContraPoints. They're people that watch these people and are regurgitating these kind of things. So I say something and it gets twisted into a way where it's like I'm holding this spore of fucking bigotry now. And that's extremely frustrating. And unfortunately, whether they like it or not, both philosophy tube and ContraPoints like help build the fucking bomb, you know? Because the arguments I'm hearing, these are like the fucking nuclei of the shit that people throw at me constantly today because I disagree with some trans shit, you know?
Leaves comments like this.
I get where this guy's coming from, but he could have presented things a bit more neutrally. I thought this was supposed to be a philosophy channel, more like Ideology Tube.
And yes, I've deliberately and explicitly
Okay, I wouldn't make that criticism myself, and I don't care.
called the transphobic position false in this video, and moreover, transphobic, rather than gender critical, the euphemism a lot of transphobes like to try and hide behind.
Transphobes. Listen, I don't know, the gender critical movement is different, I guess, now to what it was in 2018. But yeah, he's picked a side. He doesn't have to have not picked a side, that's fine. You can have a channel where you picked a side and your philosophy is trans-inclusive or something, I don't know. I wouldn't make that criticism myself. Of course trans people exist, they have to be aware of their birth sex in order to transition. Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm a binary trans person, like, I was born male and I am male, I'm, you know, a trans woman. Like, that confirms the binary, if anything. And like, you see with like non-binary people, they still very heavily reference the binary because they're still, I think the way it is, like your gender identity or whatever, you might end up rejecting your birth sex, but that still is being driven by your birth sex, if that makes sense. So someone like me, I might reject how I feel about my birth sex. Like I might just not identify with it at all. But that's still kinda, there's still the push and pull of like the binary, you know?
And again, understanding that metaphysical skepticism is at the heart of the transphobic position can help shed some light here. Since the position of the transphobe is that trans people don't really exist as trans people, and the position of trans people is obviously that they do.
I think what I'd say is a great example of what I said is the way that most like non-binary people just kind of mix and match like stereotypical fashion things from both sexes because they can't actually conceive of like no sex. So they can only really conceive of something that's in between, that's like androgynous or something. I guess that'd be an example.
Exist. Immediately, we can see that no compromise is possible. Things either exist or they don't. There's no middle ground. So in any debate on this issue,
well, we're talking about existence now, hang on.
Transphobe is that trans people don't really exist as trans people. And
as trans people, are we going to slip around on this, I guess? Losi, hi, what's this? This is old school philosophy tube when he was a man and not a trans woman. So I'm not misgendering him technically, because if I talked about philosophy tube in the present, I'd probably call them a them, because I call everyone a them, I don't know. It's good to see you. What were we talking about? So
can help shed some light here. Since the position of the transphobe is that trans people don't really exist.
I don't know if that's always even the position, but sure. Don't really exist
as trans people.
As trans people. So they do exist, just not as trans people. What do I want you to say? You can say whatever you want. You can say nothing if you want. It's up to you. It's a pretty open space like that, I guess.
The position of trans people is obviously that they do exist. Immediately,
as they are, Notice, have we dropped that so that we can, say Mary Chu is based, how about that?
Is that trans people don't really exist as trans people, and the position of trans people is obviously that they do exist. Immediately, we can
Yeah, as trans people, and they do exist. Are we going to keep dropping the as trans people?
see that no compromise is possible. Things either exist or they don't. There's
Well, the person exists regardless, so I don't know. Am I being too pedantic, maybe?
no middle ground. So in any debate on this issue,
Non-binary is an oxymoron, because non-binary is a contradiction in itself. Yeah, I mean, I don't like not believe in non-binary, but I really think it's more just like minor dysphoria or something. And if it's not that, it's probably just people wanting to be fashionable, because it's kind of a fashion movement with identity mixed in. It's like the next logical step on from like goths or emos who saw their fashion as an identity to an extent, but it's like gone way further than that. That's kind of how I see it. But yeah, I mean, you know, the fact that non-binary has to still include the binary is kind of, it's not a great case for it existing when it's already very flimsy, because it's just something anyone calls themselves, you know.
it's going to be winner takes all. The trans person
Winner takes all. I mean, I don't know.
then is in the impossible situation of having to prove their own existence to someone whose every response is going to be, how do you know? How do you know?
Well, how do you prove your existence when it's supposedly an internal thing? And every single person's story is that they met trans people and then 6 months later they were trans themselves, and they've always questioned their gender, I guess, but who knows how true that is. And like, how do you know? How do you know you're not displacing something else? I don't know that I'm not just some mentally ill, traumatized boy that couldn't handle my gender roles, and so I ended up transitioning, because it's a very plausible explanation for me personally. I'm never going to know. Like, to me, it doesn't matter, because I'm fine with who I am, but, you know, I'm one of the lucky ones then in that case.
How do you know? It's as impossible as if it were reversed, and the transphobe were asked to prove in the face of total metaphysical skepticism that they are cis. If the transphobe acknowledges
Yeah, prove that you're cis. Sure.
that trans people exist as trans people, then that amounts to a total forfeit of their position. So the strongest place a trans person could get to in that debate would still probably be one in which they are either lying or deluded about their own existence. The
Well, yeah, that's a big problem.
deck is very much stacked in the transphobe's favour. So in that situation, it's perhaps unsurprising that many, though not all people, would decide that faced with an opponent whose entire position is that
Trans lives are not a debate. Okay, so because we can't win debates, we just don't debate. Okay, we're really making a great case for trans people here. Thanks, Ollie.
total denial of your humanity as the kind of human being that you are,
Total denial of humanity is the kind of human being you are. I mean, no, it's denying your sex. It's denying your gender identity and focusing on your sex. Like, that's just not true. I'm really beginning to see where some of these fucking talking points come from, though. I mean, this got 1.8 million views, almost 1.9. This person is extremely influential. And our discourse and our language and stuff has not evolved since then, partly because of this fucking trans lives are not a debate. This is not up for debate. You don't debate anyone, so you just talk to your own people, so it just gets weirder and weirder and snowballs and gets more radical. This is part of the problem, a huge part of the problem here, and he's about to defend it, so that's good.
the only winning move in such a game would be not to play. Moreover, it's not just a rigged
And that's not a winning game. That's how you lose even worse. As evidenced by the state of trans people in fucking 2024.
game, but a risky one. The price of failing to prove to cis people that they are the gender they say they are can be death for trans people. Betcha writes, to invite me to a philosophical forum,
This is, that's very overblown.
game would be not to play. Moreover, it's not just a rigged game, but a risky one. The price of failing to prove to cis people that they are the gender they say they are can be death for trans people. Betcha writes, to invite me to a philosophical
That's an extremely, dramatic way of putting it. Wait, who is Betcher? Is that a trans person? Or, I'm not sure. Prove my womanhood. I don't know.
forum in which I prove my womanhood is to do something far different from inviting me to share my views on mathematical Platonism. Do you understand the risks? It's one thing to spout views on the composition problem with both arrogance and ignorance. It happens, it's annoying, but it's quite another thing to do this when we're talking about people who are in the room, people trying and succeeding to philosophize themselves.
Succeeding to philosophize yourself. What does that even mean?
Because I'm cis, and therefore I don't face transphobic violence, it's an element of this discussion that I'm probably inadvertently going to end up downplaying. So remember those sources below.
You're going to end up downplaying it. Yeah, sure, Ollie, you're going to end up downplaying it. Fuck off.
I know that when I imagine a bigot, I picture like a skinhead shouting in the street, and a fair bit of that does go on, but some transphobes will also cloak their bigotry in academic language, and in particular in the language of feminism. Hence the acronym of Trans-Exclusionary Radical Feminists, or TERFs, the academic feminist subset of transphobes. One transphobic academic whose work you may encounter is Ray Blanchard, who's already been thoroughly debunked by sharper minds than mine.
Debunked, there we go. By ContraPoints, no less. Keep simping, bro. You're going to be stealing her life soon.
More recently, though, in 2014, philosopher Sheila Jeffreys wrote a provocative and controversial book called Gender Hurts. Among other things, Jeffreys falsely claims that the existence of trans people would erase lesbians and gay men.
Is it not feeling like it does a little? I don't see as many butch lesbians as I used to. Like nowadays when I see one, I have no idea whether I'm supposed to call them a he or a she. Like, I don't know. I need to find more stuff about like the kind of gay erasure kind of stuff, because people literally do transition because they don't want to be gay. It happens. People do transition their kids because they don't want them to be gay. It happens. Like, there is a sense of like at least some of that. And you hear the kind of same stories that sound like similar like experiences to what I had, because people thought I was gay growing up. Whereas some of these people actually are gay, and they have these like childhoods that are kind of difficult because other kids are like fucking weird about you if you're gay. Like, trust me. And then they think that that's evidence they should have been born a girl, when that's possibly not what they were even grappling with. AGP is totally not a thing at all for anyone, including those that describe their experience exactly that. Well, we don't actually listen to people's experiences. That's just a thing we say to pretend that we're inclusive and woke and stuff. We only listen to experiences that confirm everything we already think, because we've been watching Philosophy Tube instead of anything that might have educated us properly on anything.
Since if a gay man could be attracted to somebody with a vagina, or a lesbian could be attracted to somebody with a penis, then she says, wrongly, those categories must have broken down. Again, here we see the metaphysical denial at work. Transphobes today are sidelining metaphysics in order to focus on this question, how do you know? Which we can keep posing again and again forever, like a kid in the backseat of a car going, why? But why? But why? For eternity. Jeffrey...
Okay, he does still talk out the side of his mouth, that's the thing. Charlie was bullshitting me. Being labelled a transphobe is almost a badge of honor, because it means you think of yourself. I honestly feel the same way nowadays. It gets thrown so, like, carelessly. Like, fucking allies will call me fucking transphobic, seemingly not even realizing I'm literally fucking trans. I've been trans for 9 years, but sure, I don't know.
Jeffreys refuses the metaphysical truth that some women have penises and some men have vaginas in order to focus on this question, how do you know that someone...
Some men have vaginas, but they don't, though, so, like...
could be attracted to somebody with a penis, then...
I'm serious, though. Does anyone else get, like, Richard Hammond from this? Does anyone know who that is?
She says, wrongly, those categories must have broken down. Again, here we see the metaphysical denial at work. Controversial book called Gender Hurts. Among other things, Jeffreys falsely claims that the existence of trans people...
Yeah, he just gives his opinions as facts as well. Like, I hate that kind of thing, too.
...would erase lesbians and gay men. Since, if a gay man could be attracted to somebody with a vagina, or a lesbian could be attracted to somebody with a penis, then she says, wrongly, those categories must have broken down.
Yeah, there's definitely something there. Bit of a Richard Hammond look.
Again, here we see the metaphysical denial at work. Transphobes today are sidelining metaphysics in order to focus on this question, how do you know? Which we can keep posing again and again forever, like a kid in the backseat of a car going, why? But why? But why? For eternity. Jeffreys refuses the metaphysical truth that some women have penises and some men have...
The metaphorical truth. Metaphorical. Metaphysical or metaphor? Hang on.
Backseat of a car going, why? But why? But why? For eternity. Jeffreys refuses the metaphysical truth that some...
Metaphysical. I was about to say, a metaphorical truth literally would mean a lie that's a truth. What is a metaphysical truth? The truth of ultimate reality that is above or beyond what is experienced through, what is perceived through experience or actuality. Ugh. Thrift store Richard Hammond. Jesus. I don't know, man. It's a metaphysical truth, I guess, that some women have penises. I don't know, because to me, it's not a physical truth that women have penises ever, so...
women have penises and some men have vaginas, in order to focus on this question, how do you know that someone is a lesbian? Okay, how do you know that? How do you know that?
Writing many centuries after the
Well,
ancient
you don't, so I guess you go off their behavior and what they tell you. So, I don't know, some men will act like stereotypical women in the hope that they'll get called a woman, I guess. Wow.
skeptics, Scottish philosopher David Hume said that skepticism is a bit like coleslaw. A little bit is okay, but
I fucking hate coleslaw.
would you want to eat a meal that's
Like, I can smell it through the screen, like that fucking off-paint kind of smell. Like, fuck that shit. I don't care. Like, any of my food takes are, like, unironically not up for debate, but you can if you want, I guess.
just coleslaw? Hume thought that nobody could maintain this kind of skepticism forever about everything. You can ask yourself, how do I know my teeth really exist? But as soon as you bite into a sandwich, you can't help but believe in a metaphysical reality. Someone can explore their sexuality.
Yeah, just like, if I think I'm a woman, but I've got a penis, and I fuck a woman, and she gets pregnant, that would probably confirm to me that I'm male. You know?
By considering the a priori concepts of straight, gay, bisexual, pansexual, and what those mean, or more likely they'll explore those things by actually living and finding out that way, because there are more things in heaven and earth, Jeffries, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. The great subverter of Pyrrhonism, or the excessive principles of skepticism, is action and employment, and the occupations of common life. These principles may flourish and triumph in the schools where it is indeed difficult if not impossible to refute them, but as soon as they leave the shade, and by the presence of the real objects which actuate our passions and sentiments, are put in opposition to the more powerful principles of our nature, they vanish like smoke and leave the most determined skeptic in the same condition as other mortals. For here is the chief and most confounding objection to excessive skepticism, that no durable good can
Why is it excessive skepticism, then, to say that you don't think women can have penises? And if a man comes up to you saying, I'm a woman, you'd ask, like, well, how do you know? Like, I don't know. The problem with coming in with a bias, I guess, when he was saying earlier about not seeming very balanced, the problem with coming in with a bias is it just sounds like you've bought one side and are just presenting it to people instead of really thinking for yourself.
never result from it, while it remains in its full force and vigour. We need only ask such a skeptic what his meaning is, and what he proposes by all these curious researches. What the f*** is all this coleslaw doing on my plate?
Hume raises an interesting question, though. What are transphobes trying to achieve with all of this hardline skepticism? Why, in the potluck of life, are they only bringing industrial amounts of the blandest possible coleslaw? Well,
What does that mean? I like, I don't know, hang on one sec.
Coleslaw doing on my plate?
Hume raises an interesting question, though. What are transphobes trying to achieve with all of this hardline skepticism?
So, like, their takes are the bland coleslaw, I guess, which is interesting because it's the trans arguments that have not changed even, like, slightly between then and now. And, like, sorry, my brain is doing a thing because I'm watching Philosophy Tube and that's just what happens. Oh, no, I've lost it. Let's just try again.
And what he proposes by all these curious researches. What the f*** is all this coleslaw doing on my plate?
Hume raises...
Yeah, like, the trans arguments have not changed, like, at all since this. Like, I think most people honestly just watched these videos, took everything Philosophy Tube, ContraPoints, etc. said as gospel and just regurgitated the arguments. And, like, the gender critical side actually has evolved. So, it's kind of ironic sort of watching this kind of victory lap against the transphobes that really wasn't, as it turned out.
This is an interesting question, though. What are transphobes trying to achieve with all of this hardline skepticism? Why, in the potluck of life, are they only bringing industrial amounts of the blandest possible coleslaw? Well, beyond just garden variety bigotry, one theoretical explanation might be...
Garden variety bigotry. Wow. This person isn't even good at arguing this stuff. Listen, you say that, but whenever I cover this person, I get so many fucking virgins in my comment sections crying at me, so... Like, the last one I watched, it was a good 20 minutes of, like, setup, and then about 5 minutes vaguely making some points, and then ending when I'm like, shit, maybe this is gonna get good finally. And then people complained that I had nothing to say almost for, like, 20 minutes of the video. It's because she didn't fucking say a thing. But he was a woman in that one, I guess, so, yeah.
That once we realise trans people exist, and therefore must be legally acknowledged to exist...
Once we've realised they exist, so the absolute truth is his side, and he's telling you why the other side is wrong, but I'm not getting much of why the other side is wrong, if I'm honest.
We can start having more interesting conversations, like, what can we do about the fact that a lot of trans people don't have access to the healthcare they need? What can we do about the fact that a lot of trans people are disproportionately more likely to be refused jobs?
You can still have those questions, even if you don't personally believe in them. You can still understand that these people still exist as they believe themselves to. Like, I don't know. And why is that a more interesting question?
Acknowledge that people exist, then we can have a conversation about material access to their human rights. But as long as the debate don't stop and the metaphysical skepticism is maintained, all those questions get delayed.
I'm very tempted to stop watching this because I'm actually like, on the other video I watched, I was much more likely to think, you know, I guess some of these concepts are like interesting. It's just, you know, the application is really meh and you didn't come to much of a conclusion about anything. But this one, it just feels like my side's correct. Now let's do the philosophy to find out why. That's what it feels like they're doing. And it's, yeah, I actually am starting to agree with his own version of himself where it was like, why are you not more balanced? Because I don't know, Chief. I really don't know about this.
We never get to them. As long as the music keeps playing, no one gets to sit down.
This is exactly what fucking TRAs do. They just waste your time constantly. You ask a question and they take you on a tangent. And it's like, well, what about this? And then you're going round and round and round on that point and not the point you made, which conveniently they've never answered and are not going to, no matter how many times you ask them, because they don't want to. So they're just wasting your time.
Down. And transphobes at least get the peace of mind of not having to sit next to somebody they don't like. But in his letter from a Birmingham jail, Martin Luther King makes an interesting distinction between the negative peace, which is the absence of tension, and the positive peace, which is the presence of justice. One thing Betcher highlights is that regardless of the metaphysics, the kind of violence and exclusion that trans people face wouldn't be justified either way. And I don't want to paint an overly civilized picture of the transphobic position here. Frequently they do not pose their arguments in polite, academic, good faith terms. Just to remain within the City of London and within recent memory, in July of this year there was an incident where a bunch of transphobes forced their way to the front of the Pride Parade in order to distribute transphobic leaflets to the public. There's an ongoing...
Wait. Who was this group of transphobes giving out leaflets? Oh no, so much violence against me. Me personally, every other leaflet that they gave out was like flying off and turning into a throwing star, which was like narrowly missing my face. I think I had some hair cut off by it, in fact. Like, Jesus Christ, cry me a river. You're not even trans yet and you're like more of a pussy than I am. And I'm post-op.
Campaign at time of recording to try and get the City of London Corporation to ban trans people from certain public spaces. There's been fighting in Hyde Park. A bunch of transphobes are putting up transphobic stickers around the place to try and make trans women in particular feel...
Oh no, stickers, shit. I think I would have walked out if they were a guest instructor at uni. Yeah. I mean, I didn't do philosophy, thankfully, but maybe I should have. I would have known that this was a fucking huge waste of time, like, way sooner. And that these kind of people probably don't need to be, like, at the fucking forefront of, like, trans movements. But they're gonna be, so, yeah. Great.
Unwelcome, and also make your dad feel like maybe he doesn't have to get rid of that spore after all. This is not Bertrand Russell and Ludwig Wittgenstein knocking back pints on the banks of the river in Cambridge and
comparing themselves to MLK. Well, yeah.
Talking about philosophy, right? This is street philosophy, and it gets dirty because it's life and death.
Oh yeah, it's philosophy in the streets, innit?
There's one last instance of the metaphysics to epistemology shuffle that it's worth talking about, and it's going to lead us to our, not conclusion, but our to be continued. Some transphobes will be heard to say, just because somebody identifies as one thing...
I don't think they ever really conclude any videos. It's just like alluding. It's like the left-wing version of like Jordan Peterson at times. Certainly the one that I watched before, it was just transphobes bad and mean to me. Maybe we should do away with the concept of sex, which obviously we shouldn't for many, many reasons. And that was it. Like, he's made a lot more points in this video, it's just a lot more points that I really disagree with. So yeah, I don't know whether that's better or not.
Not conclusion, but to be continued. Some transphobes will be heard to say, just because somebody identifies as one thing, doesn't make it so. And there are sophisticated...
Well, yeah, obviously. You can't just call yourself something. You can't just call yourself an attack helicopter. And you wouldn't accept it if I did. Plenty of people don't accept me when I say I'm fucking trans, so I don't know what to do there. And these are trans people, by the way, not transphobes. So when are we going to start telling them what their behavior means, seeing as they're using your shitty videos to do that to me fucking constantly?
Sophisticated and unsophisticated versions of this argument. Jeffries uses one version, but so do all of the I identify as an attack helicopter memes that you'll see floating around the internet.
This argument is an attack.
Yeah, you literally cite the attack helicopter. Like, come on.
On a particular view of gender known as performativism. The idea is that some statements are performative. They not only say something, but also do the thing they say at the same time. Like saying,
well, things like performatism. Obviously, the way you perform a gender, like, you know, your gender doesn't just come down to how you look. Like, it comes down to how you are and how you talk and, like, how you move and stuff. And yeah, obviously, you're more likely to, like, pass as something the better you are at performing a certain gender. But, like, the thing is, these are, like, actions. Then it's got nothing really to do with, like, who you are as a person. And, like, your makeup and stuff, you know? So like, I don't know, it's one of those philosophical answers to a physical question, you know? Like, it's just never gonna square entirely. And, you know, apparently this was the best we got, because I fucking don't even know what other arguments we have at this point.
I promise is not just signaling that you give your word, but is in fact the act of giving your word, or saying I do at a wedding. By saying it, you're performing the action. Similarly, some thinkers have suggested that gender...
Yeah, so I'm an attack helicopter because I perform the action. So, I don't know, I've got this eyeliner here. If I, like, spin it above my head, am I performing as an attack helicopter? Because this is a rotor. You know, I can get a second one, like, put it here, do that. Am I an attack helicopter yet? Am I performing attack helicopter enough?
might work in a similar way. By saying and doing your gender, you make it so.
When transphobes say identifying as one gender doesn't make it so, that's
literally confirming. There we go. I'm an attack helicopter as long as I do that. I'm not right now, but when I was doing those things, I was, because I was engaging in performatism.
attack on performativism. But here's what they miss. Not every trans person believes that gender performativism is a good theory, and it doesn't have to be true for trans.
Yeah, I don't for once. But then fucking, we've decided that all trans people are supportive of trans kids and trans sports, which just isn't true. So I don't know. Things got even weirder than this. This feels like way wilder than it should be for 2018. I don't know.
Trans rights to be worth taking seriously. The skeptic's question is, how do you know you're the gender you say you are? What makes you that gender? And when asked in good faith, i.e. not by transphobes, that's
not by transphobes. Like, when asked in good faith, how do you know when something's being asked in good faith? And why are you encouraging people to make that decision, like, for themselves? I guess we have to, because we have to be like, oh, you're a transphobe, we don't debate transphobe, like, that kind of shit. But you end up being treated like you must be bad faith because you're asking certain kinds of questions. And that's not a good thing. That's definitely a way that we've ended up being more isolationist and, like, to our own detriment, to where it's echo chambers that spiral out of control.
That's actually a pretty interesting question for all of us. To which different cis and trans people will give you different answers. A strict performativist might say that a trans man who used to perform womanhood was a woman and then changed gender when they changed performance. Somebody else might say that no, actually he was a man his whole life and just took some time to realize it. Somebody else might say that acting as if one or other theory of gender is true would be better from the point of view of trying to legally, politically secure trans people's rights. Betcher actually thinks that the answer to the question, what makes you the gender you are, can be different in different contexts. When the transphobe says identifying as one thing doesn't make it so and dusts their hands and walks away like that's the end of the story, they're making two mistakes. Firstly, they're kind of reducing performativism to just speech acts, saying I identify as this. Whereas,
yeah, I think I already took that further, and I still don't agree with it, so.
all sorts of other things might come under a more robust definition of the word.
Because that's the thing, like, if you do a certain amount of performative things as a female that are more male, is your gender more male than female, or are you still a woman, you know?
Performance, like how you interact with other people, the way you live. There's lots of different kinds of performance, and spoken word isn't the only one. Secondly, and crucially, they're missing the fact that gender performativism isn't the...
Oh, so he oversimplifies their position to then complain that it's oversimplified. So a position like what I espoused there would be a more expanded version of that he's been reductionist on purpose because he's the writer of the video. Right.
The only theory of gender on the table. Betcher points out that trans scholars, both within and without academia, have been engaging with this question of what makes you the gender you are for about...
Trans scholars, that sounds like a fucking blacklist or something to me. List of people whose fucking fault all this is.
About 50 years. And despite the claims of a lot of transphobes that this is the discussion they don't want you to have, or this discussion is politically correct and is being censored, it's been going on a long time. And Betcher laments that a lot of transphobes show a total ignorance of the history of trans scholarship on this question, which might provide...
Yeah, we're always talking about transphobes and never like... Yeah, trans scholars, like fucking hell, God knows.
Interesting answers if they were to engage in good faith, rather...
I mean, Abigail or whatever they're called now, I guess they count as a trans scholar. Maybe you'd call ContraPoints a modern trans scholar. At least she actually says correct things sometimes, usually because she's more willing to kind of concede where shit is ridiculous. Hi, Woody Red. Yeah, I hope you're doing good.
Than in the spirit of total metaphysical skepticism. So for the sake of argument, we could actually grant that yes, the act of identifying as a particular gender is not what causally makes that statement true. It might turn out that strict gender performativism is false.
But that's how, like, non-binary is treated, by the way. It just feels like you call yourself something, and that's how it is. And I've never got a good answer for why it isn't that. Or just performing stereotypes really well is a juicy argument. Yeah, potentially. I mean, if you... Listen, for me personally, I do imitate women to an extent because I'm a male and I want to look more feminine. Some of it's more my own kind of, you know, working out what works for me. But yeah, there's a certain amount of imitation. Like, you can't really get around that. You know, you see women your whole life and you're a male, but you want to be female. You're not going to continue being just a male and be like, well, I'm female, that's my identity. Like, you kind of have to do some kind of like imitation. The problem most trans people have with that is it makes it sound less valid or whatever, whereas I don't give a fuck whether it sounds valid or not. So.
False. But all that's needed for the project of advancing trans rights is for us to realize that self-identification statements about gender made by trans people can be true.
So because it can be true, what?
What exactly it is that makes them true, ask 3 scholars and you'll get 4 opinions. But the fact that they can...
Well, I'm not asking scholars, I'm trying to work out which ones are true, which you can't. So, like, I don't know. We're just legitimizing obfuscation, it feels.
Can be true means that the onus is on the rest of us, cis people, to take statements like that morally, legally, politically, practically, personally, very, very seriously.
Really? You think so? Like, isn't there like a lot of scope for using that kind of thing to manipulate people to get into a kind of group that maybe you're not really part of, which the trans community has always had problems with? Like, we don't like gatekeeping. What ends up happening is most people in these spaces aren't really trans, and then we expand the definitions so that non-binary is trans, so literally it's just fucking cis women anyway. So, I don't know. This kind of mentality has turned out badly, in my opinion.
Ask 3 scholars and you'll get 4 opinions. But the fact that they can be true means that the onus is on the rest of us, cis people, to take statements like that morally, legally, politically, practically, personally, very, very seriously.
Special thanks to Casey Explosion, Riley J. Dennis, and
that's all you get. You should take it seriously. Why? That's the end. Thanks to these people. Oh, Riley J. Dennis. I need to look into her because, like, she was a classic back in the day. 2018. There we go. A bit strange to come back and see this video again now, having transitioned. How'd that? I'm not trans, I'm just a really passionate ally moment. Woo, we're so quirky. And it's just like memes on the fact that they're trans now, when it's like, yeah, you're on that side of the internet. It was only a matter of time. I don't know who's next, honestly. Probably like Alec Gunter or like fucking Xanderhal or something. Alright, that was Transphobia by Philosophy Tube. I look forward to how dumb I apparently am because I don't agree with Jesus himself. Well, I don't agree. I think Philosophy Tube, much like ContraPoints, is one of the people that helped build the bomb. We've got all these completely terrible arguments that are just people taking videos like this, taking the arguments like gospel, when none of these arguments should be taken as gospel. It's just philosophizing, which in a sense means that a lot of what this person says is really very open to interpretation and not really conclusive, but we treat it like conclusions. It's a bit like how we treat studies, I guess, where any positive ones are like slapped down. Nope, there's proof that actually it's like this. I don't know. This is, yeah, fuck it.